We're at the Symphony at Heinz Hall in the beautiful Grand Lobby with Katherine Balch, whose world premiere will be heard in about 24 hours. It's so great. Katherine Balch, welcome to Pittsburgh. We're thrilled to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Musica Pyralis.
Musica Pyralis. Pyralis is the genome name of the common Eastern firefly. And musica, of course, is music. So, music of fireflies, I guess.
Katherine, you cannot hear a firefly.
No, but wouldn't it be fun to imagine what they would sound like if you could sort of almost score a silent film of their evening dance? That's sort of what I'm trying to imagine in my piece.
These are the nighttime magical insects that we see in the summer, yes?
Yeah, I wrote the piece over the summer, actually, and I wrote the piece in a place I had just moved to, a quite rural place with very little sound and light pollution, and the nights were very loud and very bright, but not with human noises and human lights, but with the lights of the stars and the moon and the fireflies and the sounds of the frogs and the insects and the grass and the pond.
We haven't heard it yet. Tomorrow night you'll be taking a bow after the first performance. Can you give me a little more of the texture that you've chosen, whether you hear individual instruments with a solo moment or a little description of the Musica Pyralis?
The piece begins with a sort of ostinato that is shared between the piano and the harp. And this ostinato, this sort of gentle rippling chord progression, is the core of the piece, from which other textures and little solos and little groups and ensembles or choirs of instruments come forth and recede back into. One of the sort of quirks of the piece is that because I wanted to sort of capture this blurry, fuzzy soundscape, I asked the harp player to detune their instrument by a quarter tone, which means that when they play with the piano, they sound kind of out of tune. It's a sort of intentional out of tuneness that creates a sort of fuzzy harmonic space from which other sounds can emerge as soloists.
Gretchen was okay with messing with the tuning on her instrument?
Gretchen is phenomenal, and she really is featured in this piece substantially. So I hope you, if you're listening in the audience, you can listen for that harp sound. She had been practicing for weeks with her harp detuned to make sure that the instrument adjusted and felt comfortable with that new intonation. So I'm very grateful for her dedication to the piece.
I read that you also like the sound of rustling leaves.
Yes, and in my piece you might hear the instruments try to imitate that sound. One way they do that is by hitting the string of their instrument, if they're a violinist or a cellist, hitting the strings of their instrument with the wood of their bow instead of the hair of the bow, and that creates a kind of clicking sound, and that's called collegno battuto. Sometimes the cellists will sort of pitter-patter very delicately on the sides of their instruments, on the body, on the wooden sound, to create a kind of very gentle rustling. Sometimes the brass will just gently blow air through their instrument to sort of evoke the wind as a backdrop for some of the more melodic music that's happening.
Was there an out-of-town tryout for the piece? Did you hear it anywhere before rehearsal here?
No, this is the world premiere performance, and it's always a very nervous time for me. It's very stressful for me to hear my music outside of my head for the first time, but also really magical to see how my inner ear matches or deviates from the live sound of humans making music.
And at rehearsal or in advance, speaking with Manfred Honeck, did you work out any details, any special effects, this louder, this slower?
Absolutely. it's it's an enormous honor to work with Manfred Honeck, whose recordings, particularly of Beethoven and Brunner, I grew up listening to. And something, of course, that comes with a premiere, and even if it's not a premiere, with any orchestra, the dynamics, the balance between instruments, that's so contingent upon the hall, the musicians playing, the kinds of other materials happening around the music. So there's many little adjustments that happen after the score is finished. And part of what is such a pleasure such a pleasure to work with a conductor like Manfred is he's so sensitive to those changes and those adjustments to make every sound come out of the texture just right. So we've made a lot of little changes to the score that are part of the process of premiering a piece.
Anything else we should know so that we'll be ready for Musica Pyralis?
I hope that it's an opportunity to sort of create a space for yourself to think about how these sounds remind you of sounds that you hear in your own everyday life. And I'm really looking forward to the premiere. I'm so grateful for the Pittsburgh Symphony. It's been such an amazing opportunity.
Your life is an inspiration for much of your music. Some composers write seemingly totally in the abstract. I don't know how that's possible, but your own life experiences are reflected in the notes you put on the page.
Yes, I mean, I think we can only write what our own lived experiences are, and so it's all I can do. It's the only sort of source of material I have at my disposal is my own lived experience and my, of course, reflections on the lived experiences of others and the world around me. But at the end of the day, I think any composer can only express what they know of themselves.
I was just reading about Francis Ford Coppola, and if you look at his films, apparently they all reflect the things that were going on in his life at the time. You can sort of follow the progression. So it's not uncommon that artists pour out their emotions in what they do. You know, and I'm so glad that you've written about fireflies, something that I love in the summer. It's just a most evocative imagery and the sounds of the night, I think. It's just great. I want to know more about you. Katherine, San Diego, you were born there. One of the most beautiful places in the world.
Yes, it was a beautiful place to grow up. I'm kind of a classical music nerd, though, so I didn't really start to enjoy the beach and all the really nice things about San Diego until I left and came back.
Hey, the Beach Boys sing, they wish everyone would be California girls, you know?
I'm not very Californian by disposition. I think most people assume I'm from the East Coast or something, so yeah.
And you're teaching now at Yale.
Yes, I'm an assistant professor at Yale School of Music, where I teach courses and also teach a studio of graduate level composers.
And tell me a little bit more about your musical journey from San Diego to Yale.
Well, as a young person, I played piano, and I wasn't a particularly serious pianist until around middle school or high school, and then I really started practicing the instrument a lot and fell in love with jazz and songwriting and also classical rep more and more. It wasn't until I was auditioning as a pianist for music schools and preparing my repertoire for a conservatory piano track that, I had a high school theater teacher mention to me that, the music I was writing for the high school plays, the songs I was interested in writing, all these things, I could actually study that in school. So I put together a portfolio and shifted gears towards composition studies. Because my parents didn't really want me to go to music school. The sort of deal was if I did a double degree scenario where I received an academic degree, then they would help support me through my conservatory education. So I did a double degree with Tufts University in history and political science, but ended up continuing in my graduate studies to pursue composition. And now I'm teaching it, so I guess I never really left school.
The best. That's what it's all about, lifelong learning. Certainly what we do on the radio and public television. Tufts, what did you enjoy about history? What was your favorite thing there?
Well, my studies in history and political science political science was mostly about the history of ideas, and I was particularly interested in sort of Enlightenment and post-Enlightenment reactions. Somebody I spent a lot of time with in undergrad was the philosopher Rousseau, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who was actually a composer himself and had a lot of very funny kind of contradictory opinions about the arts and theater and public engagement with music that I sort of continue to think about. I don't really agree with many of them, but I think this person trying to sort out what the role of the arts are in society, as many philosophers have tried to do, since Plato's Republic, and I'm sure before, is something that whether or not it immediately, comes into my music is sort of a intellectual curiosity and conditioning that I continue to reflect on. What is my relationship to society as an artist and my responsibility as a citizen in the arts?
And Mom and Dad are okay with having a composer in the family now?
I think now they're okay with it, yeah.
Are they coming this weekend?
Oh, no, can't go to every softball game, but they will be at the New York Phil performance, and that'll be really fun. Yeah.
It's great that the piece is immediately going to be heard in Ann Arbor and Erie, New York. Am I forgetting a city? Lots of them after here, I'm sure.
Well, we'll see. It's always surprising and a huge relief when a premiered piece has multiple opportunities for performance, because often these experiences that you spend sort of, a lot of your time, months and maybe even years working on, they kind of evaporate as soon as the premiere happens. So it's this very strange temporal dystopia where you pour a ton of energy into a thing, into an object that sort of is experienced in a very short and limited span of time. So the New Music USA Amplifying Voices project, something that's so wonderful about that project, which is the reason why this commission and this consortium is possible, is that opportunity for a piece to have a bit of a life and to breathe and to sort of get to know itself a bit.
Writing music like you are writing, I think it's wonderful because it's connecting with audiences. For a period, the composers who came from academia were not writing music. There was the famous, Milton Babbitt essay, "Who Cares If You Listen?" He said he was misquoted in the High Fidelity magazine article. But in any case, the serial movement, the electronic world that entered composition for a long period, more than 2 decades, maybe the better part of the last half century, made listeners feel cold about living composers. But you're writing music, which I think is part of a new wave.
I hope so, but I also do think it's the artist's job to challenge audiences and to invite them to hear and experience things they could not think or were not aware that they could hear or experience. Because if they can hear or experience something new in the sort of space of a concert or a show, then that opens the possibility for experiencing things in life and in the world that you didn't think you were privy to or capable of. So I do think part of your job as an artist is to challenge the audience, or maybe challenge is the wrong word, but certainly invite them into a space that might make them uncomfortable. And so for me in my work, of course, like the musical parameters I love, melody, harmony, all those elements exist in my music, but also in my music are sounds that I think audiences might be less familiar with, that might ask them to think about the way they listen to and experience the world a little differently. And that's okay to me, and that's important, I think, in any piece of art, to ask that of its listeners.
I bet your students love you at Yale. I'm sure they do.
Well, if you could fill out my course reviews, I would appreciate it. That'd be great. Yeah.
I'll be happy. If I can at some point, I will. And if we want to know more, we want to learn more about Katherine Balch, where can we go? What's on YouTube? What's on iTunes? What's out there from you?
Well, there are some things on Spotify. Most of my music is actually either on my website, katherinebalch.com, or on SoundCloud. And my music is published by Shot, which is a music publishing house, and also all my music is available through Shot. So.
And when do you get back to San Diego? Do you still have family there?
So actually, my parents just sold my childhood home. But, again, like, no one thinks of me as a Californian because maybe, I don't know, I'm too East Coast grumpy or something. But hopefully I'll get back to the West Coast soon. My parents are still there, just now in the Bay Area. So.
Oh, La Jolla, Pacific Beach.
I know, it's so beautiful. And La Jolla has a great orchestra and a great music festival, too, the La Jolla Summer Festival. But yeah, it's a beautiful place with lots of great art and culture as well.
And extraordinary desserts. Have you ever been there? It's a fantastic dessert shop, downtown and out.
But I did go to La Gourmandine this morning.
Oh, good for you.
Oh my gosh, so good, so good. Yes.
Well, I hope you can explore Pittsburgh a little bit. Maybe you have a chance to get over to the Andy Warhol Museum. It's just across the river here. So have you been here before, or is this your first time?
It's my first time, and I'm really hoping actually on the weekend to get to the Phipps Conservatory. Anytime I go to a city, the first destination I always want to check out is their botanical gardens, because it's always interesting to see what different botanical gardens sort of specialize in terms of plant life. So.
Phipps is wonderful here. Definitely worth your time. I'd highly recommend it. And you're right next to the Carnegie. If you have a chance to see the Museum of Art, that too. Yeah. Katherine Balch, such a joy to meet you. Welcome to Pittsburgh. Good luck this weekend. It's WQED Weekend at the Symphony, so we're going to try to bring our listeners, and we'll look forward to seeing you to discuss it. Are you coming over to the Overlook Bar afterwards with the musicians?
I wouldn't miss it.
Excellent. We'll talk it over. Okay.
Thank you.
Till we meet again.
Thank you so much.